10번. 다음 글의 주제로 가장 적절한 것은?
The cultural ideas spread by empire were seldom the exclusive creation of the ruling elite. Since the imperial vision tends to be universal and inclusive, it was relatively easy for imperial elites to adopt ideas, norms, and traditions from wherever they found them, rather than to stick to a single rigid tradition. While some emperors sought to purify their cultures and return to what they viewed as their roots, for the most part, empires have produced hybrid civilizations that absorbed much from their subject peoples. The imperial culture of Rome was Greek almost as much as Roman. Imperial Mongol culture was a Chinese copycat. In the imperial United States, an American president of Kenyan blood can eat Italian pizza while watching his favorite film, Lawrence of Arabia, a British epic about the Arab rebellion against the Turks. 1. Reasons for the collapse of great empires. 2. Severe moral corruption of imperial elites. 3. Distinct differences among ancient empires. 4. Impacts of ancient Rome on Western culture. 5. Integrative characteristics of empire civilizations.
11번. 다음 글의 주제로 가장 적절한 것은?
The original idea of a patent, remember, was not to reward inventors with monopoly profits, but to encourage them to share their inventions. A certain amount of intellectual property law is plainly necessary to achieve this, but it has gone too far. Most patents are now as much about defending monopoly and discouraging rivals as about sharing ideas, and that disrupts innovation. Many firms use patents as barriers to entry, suing upstart innovators who trespass on their intellectual property, even on the way to some other goal. In the years before World War I, aircraft makers tied each other up in patent lawsuits and slowed down innovation until the U.S. government stepped in. Much the same has happened with smartphones and biotechnology today. New entrants have to fight their way through patent thickets if they are to build on existing technologies to make new ones. 1. Side effects of anti-monopoly laws. 2. Ways to protect intellectual property. 3. Requirements for applying for a patent. 4. Patent law abuse that hinders innovation. 5. Resources needed for technological innovation.
12번. 다음 글의 주제로 가장 적절한 것은?
Many marine species including oysters, marsh grasses, and fish were deliberately introduced for food or for erosion control, with little knowledge of the impacts they could have. Fish and shellfish have been intentionally introduced all over the world for aquaculture, providing food and jobs, but they can escape and become a threat to native species, ecosystem function, or livelihoods. Atlantic salmon are reared in ocean net pens in Washington State and British Columbia. Many escape each year, and they have been recovered in both saltwater and freshwater. In Washington State, British Columbia, and Alaska, recreational fishing can also spread invasive species. Bait worms from Maine are popular throughout the country. They are commonly packed in seaweed which contains many other organisms. If the seaweed is discarded, it or the organisms on it can colonize new areas. Fishing boots, recreational boats, and trailers can pick up organisms at one location and move them elsewhere. 1. Benefits of recreational ocean fishing. 2. Ways to maintain marine biodiversity. 3. Potential value of the ocean for ecotourism. 4. Contribution of ocean farming to food supply. 5. Human influence on the spread of invasive species.
13번. 다음 글의 주제로 가장 적절한 것은?
The development of writing was pioneered not by gossips, storytellers, or poets, but by accountants. The earliest writing system has its roots in the Neolithic period, when humans first began to switch from hunting and gathering to a settled lifestyle based on agriculture. This shift began around 9500 B.C. in a region known as the Fertile Crescent, which stretches from modern-day Egypt, up to southeastern Turkey, and down again to the border between Iraq and Iran. Writing seems to have evolved in this region from the custom of using small clay pieces to account for transactions involving agricultural goods, such as grain, sheep, and cattle. The first written documents, which come from the Mesopotamian city of Uruk, and date back to around 3400 B.C., record amounts of bread, payment of taxes, and other transactions, using simple symbols and marks on clay tablets. 1. various tools to improve agricultural production. 2. Regional differences in using the writing system. 3. Ways to store agricultural goods in ancient cities. 4. Changed lifestyles based on agricultural development. 5. Early writing as a means of recording economic activities.
14번. 다음 글의 주제로 가장 적절한 것은?
It turns out that the secret behind our recently extended lifespan is not due to genetics or natural selection, but rather to the relentless improvements made to our overall standard of living. From a medical and public health perspective, these developments were nothing less than game-changing. For example, major diseases such as smallpox, polio, and measles have been eradicated by mass vaccination. At the same time, better living standards achieved through improvements in education, housing, nutrition, and sanitation systems have substantially reduced malnutrition and infections, preventing many unnecessary deaths among children. Furthermore, technologies designed to improve health have become available to the masses, whether via refrigeration to prevent spoilage or systemized garbage collection, which in and of itself eliminated many common sources of disease. These impressive shifts have not only dramatically affected the ways in which civilizations eat, but also determined how civilizations will live and die. 1. Ways to raise public awareness of sanitation. 2. Effects of improved nutrition on child growth. 3. Factors contributing to longer life expectancy. 4. Demand for establishing better medical infrastructure. 5. Controversies over how technologies change human life.
15번. 다음 글의 주제로 가장 적절한 것은?
In this world, being smart or competent isn't enough. People sometimes don't recognize talent when they see it. Their vision is clouded by the first impression we give, and that can lose us the job we want, or the relationship we want. The way we present ourselves can speak more eloquently of the skills we bring to the table if we actively cultivate that presentation. Nobody likes to be crossed off the list before being given the opportunity to show others who they are. Being able to tell your story from the moment you meet other people is a skill that must be actively cultivated in order to send the message that you're someone to be considered and the right person for the position. For that reason, it's important that we all learn how to say the appropriate things in the right way, and to present ourselves in a way that appeals to other people. Tailoring a great first impression. 1. Difficulty of presenting yourself in public. 2. Risks of judging others based on first impressions. 3. Factors keeping you from making great impressions. 4. Strategies that help improve your presentation skills. 5. Necessity of developing the way you show yourself.
16번. 다음 글의 주제로 가장 적절한 것은?
How can we access the nutrients we need with less impact on the environment? The most significant component of agriculture that contributes to climate change is livestock. Globally, beef cattle and milk cattle have the most significant impact in terms of greenhouse gas emissions GHGs, and are responsible for 41% of the world's CO emissions and 20% of the total global GHGs. The atmospheric increases in GHGs caused by the transport, land clearance, methane emissions, and grain cultivation associated with the livestock industry are the main drivers behind increases in global temperatures. In contrast to conventional livestock, insects as mini livestock are low GHG emitters, use minimal land, can be fed on food waste rather than cultivated grain, and can be farmed anywhere, thus potentially also avoiding GHGs caused by long-distance transportation. If we increased insect consumption and decreased meat consumption worldwide, the global warming potential of the food system would be significantly reduced. 1. Necessity of a dietary shift toward eating insects. 2. Effects of supply and demand on farming insects. 3. Importance of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. 4. Technological advances to prevent global warming. 5. Ways of productivity enhancement in agriculture.
17번. 다음 글의 주제로 가장 적절한 것은?
Individual human beings differ from one another physically in a multitude of visible and invisible ways. If races as most people define them are real biological entities, then people of African ancestry would share a wide variety of traits, while people of European ancestry would share a wide variety of different traits. But once we add traits that are less visible than skin coloration, hair texture, and the like, we find that the people we identify as the same race are less and less like one another, and more like people we identify as different races. Add to this point that the physical features used to identify a person as a representative of some race, e.g., skin coloration, are continuously variable, so that one cannot say where brown skin becomes white skin. Although the physical differences themselves are real, the way we use physical differences to classify people into discrete races is a cultural construction. 1. Causes of physical variations among different races. 2. Cultural differences between various races. 3. Social policies to overcome racism. 4. Importance of environmental factors in evolution. 5. Misconception about race as a biological construct.